So, beginning with the first panel of the conference, it's titled Arts Education and its Sustainability Demands of the 21st Century. The 21st century has brought significant changes in our society, politics, and culture owing to rapid transformations in economy, technology across the globe, all of which have impacted education. As we navigate through these changes, it is crucial to examine how arts education can adapt and thrive. This panel aims to address the continued significance and relevance of arts education by addressing current challenges, identifying opportunities for growth, and exploring innovative approaches. I would like to invite the four panelists and the moderator to come and present. Shivananda Hombal, he's from Dhwani Trust, Dharwad. Gayatri Nair from CBB Prism, Chennai. Leena Vincent, who's an art curator from Goa, and R. Srinivasan, who's a member of the Planning Commission of Tamil Nadu. The moderator for this panel is Samin Almas from the Nalanda Wave Foundation, New Delhi. Thank you.
So we'll start with our first presenter today, Mr. Hombal.
To share my experience in the first half of my presentation. In that part, there are three sections. I will explain them. And then I will come to this question, okay, which we have discussed today. In first part, I would like to share my experience as a lecturer and as a teacher also. So when I finished my post-graduation in Kannada language in 1985. I joined as a lecturer in one of the best colleges in North Karnataka, that is Hubli. That was a science college. In that science college, at PUC degree level, Kannada used to be studied as second language. And for Kannada, even for Hindi also, Indian language, even Telugu was there, and Urdu also was there. For any second language, the periods were not given in the main time of the timetable. Actual time of the college was morning 10 o'clock to 3:30 p.m. And I was given time to take the classes before 10:30 or after 4:30, so that students can come if they like to. Students may attend the classes, language classes, if they are interested. Otherwise also, no problem. Because main focus was given to science subjects, because it was a science college. That was their justification for that. So then when I met my first batch of PUC and also BSc students, it was really very saddening part for me, because other science teachers, lecturers used to get a lot of respect from the students. They were very popular also because of many reasons. Of course, they were good lecturers also. I'm not trying to condemn them. Okay? I'm trying to just explain the situation. It was very disturbing. Anyway, it was inevitable to take class from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the morning or after 4:30 to 5:30. Then of course, I studied the reason for this kind of things, unpopularity for these Indian languages. Then I started to address my students. In the class of 150 or 160 students in PUC level, hardly 25-30 students used to come. I was supposed to teach, plays. Tolugoti was there, written by Kailasam. And then one novel was there, which was written by Sundar Nadkarni. Its name was Gode. Okay, then I thought whatever may be the reactions from the students, as a lecturer, my teaching or lecturing must be very, very creative. That thought came into my mind. Then I put all my effort to read those texts in very artistic way. After reading the text, I used to allow students to ask the questions. In 1 hour's lecture period, I used to take just 45 minutes to read artistically, okay, in very creative way also you can say, and then invite the students to ask the questions. And in the same way, I started to read the novel in a very creative way, okay, as if something was happening on the stage. That was the impression students used to get from my reading. And gradually, within 2 months, some very significant change appeared. Out of 150 students in PUC level, at least 100 to 120, 25 students came to my school and my class and attend the class in the morning itself from 9 to 10 o'clock. It was very difficult to come to Hubli in the morning because many students used to come from nearby villages actually. So it was not so easy to catch the bus or train and come to Hubli. And then some days I was supposed to take class after 4:30. Students used to wait for my class. Okay, I'm not trying to boast any for my own history here. What I'm trying to say here is that language teaching definitely is a very significant area because language is not just a means of communication. We usually try to define language as means of communication. Of course, it has its own energy in that statement. But actually, as Indians who have some different understanding about the language, it is not just means of communicating something. For us, language is Belaku, Jyoti. Okay, in Kannada we have one line which was told or written by Allama Prabhu. People who have come from Kannada background must be knowing this. Matu embudu Jyotirlinga. Matu means language or any expression or language here, Nudi. Okay, language is not just means of communication, it is light by itself, Jyotirlinga for us. Okay, ಭಾಷೆ ಎಂಬ ಬೆಳಕು ಇಲ್ಲದಿದ್ದರೆ ಜಗತ್ತು ಕತ್ತಲೆಯಾಗಿರುತ್ತಿತ್ತು. If you know this. So if there was no this light of language, whole world would have been in darkness. It means, see, if we start to look at our languages, our means languages, okay, here I am using this word our in Indian context, okay, educational context you can say. If we really shift our attitude towards the language and language education itself, that can bring drastic and very important changes in the curriculum itself. Once we bring such changes in the curriculum, language curriculum, then it will come into pedagogical level. Then it will go into D.Ed and B.Ed colleges. And accordingly, our method of teaching will change. Otherwise, what's happening, if we stick to this, what is that? Language means of communication. If we stick to that, what will happen? Now, our goal of teaching language, any language, especially Indian language, is come to very minimal level. Means, ಸ್ವಚ್ಛ ಏನಿದೆಲ್ಲ ಮೇಡಮ್, ಸ್ವಚ್ಛ ಶುದ್ಧ ಓದು, ಸ್ಪಷ್ಟ ಓದು, ಶುದ್ಧ ಬರಹ. ವಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಅದನ್ನೇ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು. ಸೊ ಸ್ಪಷ್ಟ ಓದು What is the aim of language learning or teaching? Spashta Vodu, whatever text given to you must be able to read that very clearly. Spashta Vodu. Okay? Then Swachha Baraha, Shuddha Baraha. Shuddha Baraha. In Kannada, we have in North Kannada, I'm from North Karnataka, we have another word, Dundige Baribeku. Dundige means it should look very beautiful. That's what, because Kannada letters are in circular ways. That's all. I mean, as far as language theory of teaching is concerned, okay, Spashta Vodu and Shuddha Baraha. See, what does it mean? If we put all our efforts to teach Swachha Vodu, means reading clearly, without understanding. Okay? Because in that definition, there is no word as understanding. Reading for understanding is not there. So we are encouraging mechanical, a way of learning the languages. And then Dundige Baribeku, Shuddha Baraha. I can look into even Kuempu's novel and then copy it very neatly. So it means, are we creating only copywriters in a way, or creative writers? What are we trying to do? So that was a big question before me, even at that time. And then I left that job. I came to Bangalore. I worked as a language teacher in one of the best, or very famous, not best may not be right word, very famous school, which was run by Krishnamurti Foundation of India, KFI. I am very proud to announce this. There I got a chance to experiment with how to teach Kannada as a second and third language, because their students used to come from different linguistic background. And again there, Kannada teachers were very unpopular. Unpopular in the sense, no popularity at all. Okay, in that sense. I got really angry at that time, because even art teachers were very popular. Okay, I'm sorry to mention this, okay, because most of you are art teachers, artists. And then English teachers and other subjects, especially science teachers also, were very popular, very popular. And then students who used to take Kannada as second language for their ICSE level examination were out of 10 only 2-3 students used to take Kannada as second language. But why? Even though some of them had come from Kannada background, they used to take Hindi or Sanskrit, something like that. I personally am not against Hindi or Sanskrit, okay. It's not a political statement, it is actually, because in my home, Hindi is used a lot actually, because of my wife and her mother. Anyway, so it is not a political statement which I am trying to make. So I am not against any languages. Okay. So then I started to do an experimentation. I studied why this is happening in that school like this. Why students are not coming to take Kannada as second language. Then I found that there were some, mistakes in the pedagogy itself and teaching and learning materials. I mean, resource materials. Lack of resource materials were there. There were no, workbooks at that time in Kannada to teach second or third language. Okay, for first language we had some materials for that. And then I requested the management to give me some space and time to do some experimentations. And then as part of that experimentation, I used stories as a main, content, main stuff. Story reading in creative way, and then converting those stories into small skits, converting songs into small skits, using a lot of folk tales and folk songs, even folk dances also. And then, when in the process of converting stories into plays, I involved the students also. So, like that, this experimentation happened for 4 years. At the end, and also, this is one very important thing because many policymakers are here. I would like to uh, bring into their notice. I requested the management to give me first standard class and then continue me in the same batch for 4 years. Don't change the teacher because education can happen in right kind of relationship, especially with small children. Of course, even with the big children also it is the same actually. So don't try to, do experiments like that. Okay, allow me to do this experiment in my own way, so don't disturb me for 4 years. Of course, they understood very well because it is one of the very sensitive management, I would say. They allowed me to do all kinds of experiments with language teaching. And when that first batch passed their first standard and they were supposed to take either Kannada or English as their second language from fifth standard. You may not believe, or I definitely believe you that you will believe whatever I'm going to say. Out of 20 students at that time, 16 students came to take Kannada as a second language. Okay, that was one, you can say, result I got. Second thing, I became very popular teacher also. Okay. Whenever students, parents used to, tell the students to take 1 day off, 1 day leave for some their family function or whatever. Then immediately students used to go and see the timetable. If next day is Kannada class, then they will not apply for leave. They did not want to miss Kannada class. So again, let us come back to the philosophy of this, okay? If our teaching itself become, whatever subject it may be, very artistic, okay, then only real education can happen. I'm not talking about just language education. I'm talking about the whole education. Where are we failing, or where is the way to, educate our children in right way, right use way is, there is one approach to teaching itself, that is artistic way of teaching. Okay, that's why I would like to come back to Ganesh sir, whatever he said. Let us not bifurcate, language teaching, math teaching. Of course, teachers should have very deeper knowledge in their subject areas, no doubt about that. But the approach to teaching must be very artistic, irrespective of their subject. It can be maths or whatever it is. And then whatever experiments I did with the Valley School students, somehow government came to know about that. At that time, DPP program had started in Karnataka, also in 8th district of Karnataka. Unfortunately, we had some very sensitive officers. Somehow they came to know about my experimentations, and they invited me to train their master resource persons. So then I got the idea that whatever knowledge I have got through this experimentation as a language teacher, this must reach larger section of our teaching community. Then we started our Dhwani Trust. Through that Dhwani Trust, we have designed 3 projects. There in that project, we have taken language Kannada and social science also as a core subjects. Because sir was also telling, science and maths are given prominence. Societal prominence is there. Not because they are really a good subject or bad subject. There is market for that actually. Whereas these languages, especially second and third languages, whatever our children learn, they don't have a market. That is one thing. Okay, so that's why in our project we thought of focusing on language and also social science. This is one we call Chitra Katha Pata, story scroll, you can say. It's written by Devudu Narasimha Shastri. Very recently, I found that he has written. He was a great, writer. Mm. Okay, yeah. So he has written few stories for children also. Okay. Very recently, I came to know about that. Then I took one of his stories and created that story into this story scroll actually. Okay. Well, of course, the language was little bit different from whatever language we are using now. And we rewrote the story and we used child-friendly language, of course, because it is meant for 6 and 7-year-old child. And these are the pictures created by one Mallappa Natika from Vijapur. Okay. So this will go to the first standard children. But first standard children do not know how to read and write because they are beginners. That's why instruction is given to the teachers. Teachers should read this story. And there is a methodology to use such materials in the classroom, how seating arrangement can be done. Okay, while we, do this kind of story reading, we should call the children, make them sit in a circle and teachers should become part of that circle. It is not like giving lecture. And fortunately, we met some teachers. Now they are taking the children outside the classroom and making them to sit under a tree and then narrate such stories. Okay, such story books are there. And then after converting them, sometimes we give such materials. There is a story behind this. Okay, children are supposed to color them and make them into puppets and convert that story, whatever story is there behind this, convert that story into a skit. In that process, children will learn reading skills, writing skills, and then so expressing themselves. The expression is most important skill they are supposed to learn. So anyway, I'll stop here. All books are there. Such books are there after third standard to ninth standard. Such small story books are given to each and every child of our project. It means they will become the owner of this story and they have freedom to read such stories whenever they get interested in reading this. It is not teacher centric. It is child centric, very democratized way of learning, you can say. Afterwards, I will share the impact of all these things. Okay. So here I will stop with one conclusive statement. There is a need to create very meaningful and attractive, both actually, meaningful and attractive teaching and learning materials for small kids. And after that, we need to give good stuff to enhance their reading abilities. Because we are somehow giving very simple material to our, middle class, secondary school children. We are satisfied with giving them very simple material. If they are able to read this much, that's okay. So we should not really get satisfied there at that level. There is one expectation. I am making this statement. which inspired, I got inspired by Sri Arbindo's, what kind of language we need to teach. Based on that, I'm translating that into our context. When our children, Karnataka children, okay, I'm giving example from Kannada and Karnataka, when they reach 8th standard level, they should be able to read big novels like Malayagali Madhumagalu, something like that. And not just reading, Spashtabarava Ashtayala. Read for meaning. That will really help us to rebuild these cultures. I'm not talking about only Kannada culture, human culture. Then only it is possible, otherwise we'll be cheating ourselves and also cheating cheating our youths also. I'll stop here. Thank you. Thanks. Listening.
Thanks, Amina. Good morning, everyone. While the computer is starting, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Gayatri. I'm one of the co-founders of the Chennai Photo Biennale. We are a public arts foundation. We have a public festival, photography festival, every 2 years. It's actually going on right now. So those of you who can come to Chennai, I invite you to come. We're open till the 16th of March. I have some maps with me here at the end of the panel. Please take them from me. There are about 20 exhibitions open all across the city. They're all free. And one of the, I think the projects that we are most proud of is a project called What Makes Me Click. It's a photography exhibition with 20 projects from around the world. Several from India, but also from Gaza, from Guatemala, from the UK, all showcasing how photography is being used in different communities for different uses. So please do visit. This is an invitation from me. So yeah, I think the subject that I have chosen is building resources for the art class. And I know many of you must be thinking, oh, photography, it's a very resource intensive art form to bring into the class. It used to be, I think it's not so much now thanks to the smartphone, which is the primary device we use in our art class. So I'll talk a little bit about the projects we've done using photography. Let's see if this clicker works. Okay, so before going into that, quickly introducing CPB Foundation. We are a foundation that, are you able to see? Yeah. We are a foundation that promotes photography in its practice and as an art form, and we focus on community building as well. So we have a space in Chennai which is called the Lighthouse, where you can come read photography books. We have a dark room where you can do analog practices of photography, like a 35mm film, if those of you are familiar with how we used to shoot photographs maybe just 30-40 years ago. So we have a dark room, we have a lab where you can do workshops and residencies and create art form. And the Biennale is this big public art event that happens every 2 years. So we have been working in the space of art education at the primary, middle and high school levels in Chennai primarily, and through certain other programs we've been able to reach outside Chennai, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Those are our publications and curriculum development as well. We also work in teacher training. So why photography? Why are we using this medium? I'm a photographer myself, so that is sort of what attracted me to this medium. When I got into the classroom, I realized that I think of photography as magic. I think that the idea that I can capture something I see and then it's on my device, or if it's on a paper, I feel like there's something magical about the fact that we can record what we see with our eyes on a piece of paper or on a computer screen. So photography has that ability to make, maybe children now don't see it as magically as maybe we thought of it, but for me that was the factor of bringing photography into the classroom. But photography has various ways in which children can engage with the outside world. So we've noticed that with photography, it encourages children to go out, connect with outdoor spaces, their nature in their cities and in their schools. It also helps blend art and technology. Something that all children are looking for now is I think just the idea of paper and pen is not as exciting anymore. They need that extra device that they see with their, their older siblings or with their parents, and they're attracted to this idea of a computer or a device that they want to use. So why not use it constructively? Why not say, okay, look, you have this smartphone in your hand, what can you do creatively with it? So that was another objective to bring the photography into the classroom. We're also, for us, what's really important is photography photography has a very violent history. Maybe 100, 150 years ago, those people who had cameras were all, I mean, it still exists, but it was always the power dynamic, right? Who has the camera wields the power. If I have the money, I have a camera, and I'm usually a white man, but I can go around the streets and create artistic projects, or I can shoot on the street without any understanding of who I'm photographing or asking them for permission, or also how I choose to represent them. So we wanted to shift that narrative, and by empowering young children in communities around ours, we want to make sure that they also have that power to tell their stories through their cameras and their lenses, thereby also shifting the narrative of what kind of stories we want popular media or what we want on the internet, by giving them this powerful tool that they can use. And as a result of that, empowering them to be change makers for their communities. If they want to talk about something that's happening in their neighborhood and they want more people to know, then photography and even filmmaking is a great tool to do that, to get the message out. So these are the reasons why we are using photography in the classroom. So here are the things we do. We do art interventions and workshops. We do docent and art mediator programs. I'll talk a little bit about that. We do teacher training and capacity building, curriculum development, publications, and exhibitions. Exhibitions is something that is very close to our heart because I see the exhibition there, and I think that having an art program must have an exhibition component to it, because it really connects everything you do throughout the year with the children and brings it out to the community at large, showcasing to the parents, teachers, all other stakeholders the value of what they have been teaching this whole year. So exhibition is a big part of what we do at the end of the year. We do it at the school level also, but we also do it in public spaces like at a museum or at a gallery, etc. So exhibition is a big part of what we do. And here are all the places our programs have reached: Chennai, Bangalore, Dhaka, Madurai, Goa, Kochi, Jammu, Kashmir, Meghalaya, Mumbai, Pune, etc. And more. Actually, we've now expanded our reach outside Chennai quite a bit. So any of you outside Chennai who want to collaborate, please do reach out to me. So we started in 2018, and since then we've had several exhibitions and several publications. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about our publications. Sorry. Oh no, before that. So I think because this talk was about resources in the classroom, and I wanted to talk about how photography can be used in the classroom without having a camera. It's about teaching visual thinking. It's about teaching children how, because now we're all consuming a lot of media, how do we tell children to consume critically and think about what they're consuming and not take in the image and just believe it, because traditionally the photograph is proof, right? It's proof that something has happened, but no longer is this the case today. We live in a world where we cannot believe anything we see, and children have to be critical about what they do. And not only that, we know that every photograph, even if it's not generated or manipulated, it's taken from a perspective of the person who's holding the camera. So how do they ensure that they're able to see something critically? So this is an example of a classroom activity we do, which is inspired by a strategy called visual thinking strategy. This is about just looking at images and learning to have a conversation about images. So this is something you can use if you just print out the photograph and take it to the class and have a discussion around photographs. So for example, in this photograph, here are the questions we will ask. What is going on in this image? Maybe some of us can answer what's going on in this image.
Taj Mahal is put into Manhattan.
Mirror image? Mirror?
There's a mirror image. What makes you say that there's a mirror image?
When you apartment.
Oh, it shows your inner self, okay. Apartment buildings, okay. Symmetrical structure. What makes you say it's a symmetrical structure?
And also pure perspective, you can see.
Yeah, so the idea of using this sort of example is to get children to talk a little bit about what they're seeing and also build on the materials that they're learning in the classroom. So for example, a lot of you use words like perspective, equally distributed, etc. These are things that they will learn in the art class. How can we apply that when they're also critically looking at images? This can be done with paintings, it can be done with photographs, that's your choice, but we do this as an activity in the classroom. And then after, let's say 2 minutes of them saying that, we ask them, what more can you see? What more can you see? Because often what happens is we see images and then we go beyond it. But can you see anything more than what you've already heard? Can you see anything else?
Time.
Sorry?
Time.
Time? How do you see time? What makes you see time? It's an afternoon time. Okay, what makes you say it's afternoon time? Because of the shadow. So here are the kind of questions you can ask the child or the student in your classroom, that okay, if you're saying it's afternoon, why are you saying it's afternoon? What makes you say that? Okay, then shadow. That means they've learnt about what shadows do during the course of the day. So they're also learning something from that.
History and the modern structures.
Yeah, and actually this, I'll just tell you what this photograph is. It's I don't do this in the classroom. We don't tell them what the photograph is. This is just a discussion. But this is a photograph by an artist called Vamika Jain, who takes popular images that we all take when we go to travel, and then she changes them a little bit to make you uncomfortable, so that you see you see beyond that typical touristy image. So you should check out her work. Yeah, so she's changed the image. So the idea is to surprise you, give you a little bit of discomfort, but also show you something very familiar. Okay, and this is another example of a classroom activity we do, which is looking for alphabets in your surroundings. So here you do need a camera, but you don't need an amazing camera or an amazing smartphone. Any basic camera will do. Basically looking for everyday shapes and looking for alphabets. So A to Z, we tell them to do this first, then we say, okay, look for your name, look for your friend's name, and so on and so forth. So this is the idea, is teaching them the skill of looking and observing around them. And it's a great interactive game, because they sort of get into this thing of like, okay, I want to get from A to Z very fast, so they go around looking for things, and this is simple enough activity. You can also exhibit this after you do this in your classroom. All children can have an A to Z calendar of their own, and they can print it and keep it in their houses or in the classroom. So I'll talk a little bit about our publication. So when we first started doing the Biennale, we realized that the Biennale is showing international artists. It's showing very, as Sir said, this language of modern art, which is not accessible to young children. So we started creating art mediation tools for children. Maybe you can hold this somewhere. So this book is called, this is our first publication, it's called Peer Ponder Play. It's inspired by the 3rd edition of our Biennale. We took 6 artists' work from the Biennale, and then we basically simplified that work so that the children who do these activities will learn about the artists, their practice, but also create an artwork of their own using it, but without having to ever visit the Biennale. They don't have to visit the Biennale, they don't have to read that elaborate artistic text. They create their own interpretations of what that artist practices. So for example, Sendil, that's called creature comics. You make a comic book out of creatures that you see in nature, like an ant or a bug. And this is inspired by one of the photographers, Sendil, who works in nature and wildlife. And then the second book we created, so this book actually went out to many schools in Tamil Nadu, because it was made in English and Tamil, and also Hindi, but Hindi we weren't able to reach as many schools. But inspired from this, we got a lot of feedback from the teachers who said, okay, look, this works, but it has too many photography activities and we don't have cameras in our classroom, we can't do it, so can you make a new version of this without any need for devices? So we made the second book, which is Peer Ponder Play, and this actually is made purely for art teachers. It's made as a teacher's resource. It's got 8 activities for grades 1 to 3, and then 12 for the slightly older age groups. This is the teacher's book, and it's beautifully illustrated. We have an illustrator who's made them, and the reason for doing this is we thought that, you know, teachers always get boring books, and why not make something really pretty and engaging for them, so that they also have fun when they're teaching. And this comes with yeah, okay, I'm going to finish quickly. This comes with activity sheets that you can download, and then you can print in your classroom at a cheap rate, right? So the idea was to also make it accessible for the teachers and also cheap for them to print out activity sheets that they can do in the classroom. That is my thing. I think I'm almost done anyway. Yeah, here, just wrapping up, I'm just showing you some photographs from our past programs, images taken by children in classrooms, all taken on the smartphone, not taken in any fancy cameras. And these are all photographs of exhibitions we've had. And also different forms of exhibition, like we don't always have to do something really elaborate, something very simple like tying up cloth and hanging it on a thread. Thank you. Yeah, my email is here if anyone wants to connect with us, but we'll chat now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gayatri. Thank you for taking the time. We now have Meena Vincent, who is an art historian and art curator from Goa.
Okay, thank you so much to IFA and of course the entire group of people who are who have already spoken so inspiringly since the morning, that I think I have to rethink about a lot of things that I want to talk about. There's so much to speak. So I'm Leena Vincent, and I'm an art historian and curator. Largely, I have been very lucky to work in a completely interdisciplinary space. And what I'd like to do in these 15 or 20 minutes is to give a broad overview of some of the projects that I've been involved in the last decade, focusing on a few case studies so that it gives context to the ideas that we are all sharing today. Actually my journey with mentorship began with the Kochi Muziris Biennale, which opened, Students Biennale that opened in 2014 and 15. And it was a really beautiful project that wanted to engage with arts institutions across India, work with students and teachers, understand the kind of problems or gray areas that appear within curriculums, and by giving an opportunity during a biennale to understand how to rectify or how to go back into the institutions and develop some kind of changes, because we all know that many of our systems that we are following in our institutions are obsolete. However, this project went on for a couple of years. There were a couple of symposiums, and it went into the gray area again. Unfortunately, the wonderful work that many researchers, I have to say, worked with during this entire development of this entire program until it changed and went into different hands. It was a beautiful program, but it did not go forward. However, the inspiration that it gave me allowed me to actually formalize this idea of how does one develop a mentorship program outside of the main institution. It's not always, of course, institution versus an alternative space. We have to walk the line between the two, and I very much respond to many of the things that have been spoken today. So I began another project with mentorship that was with the Piramal Museum, with the Piramal Art Residency, and it was actually bringing together creative practitioners for a year-long program that actually allowed them to explore spaces that are not usually given in an arts institution. I won't go into all the details of that, but I think we can share later about the numerous problems that we encounter within institutions. However, the pandemic came by, and then we were again hit with the changes in the Piramal institution itself. Their museum and residencies closed. So in Goa, where I am, I developed another project 4 years ago, which is called the Sunaparanta Art Initiator Lab. And through this program, which is now in its 4th year, I'm very proud to say, we have had creative practitioners coming in for a 10-month program, which I have designed in a modular way. It is led by me, but they these creative practitioners who are coming from not only fine arts but various fields of creative practice and of different age groups. There is no age limit. We've had a 63-year-old, we now have a 50-year-old with us. So what happens is that they interact with various experts throughout the calendar that is created, and they are then able to develop their own research practices, their own work, and it results also in these wonderful collaborations. Now, something that I've really understood is all the opportunities I've had for mentorship or engaging with this relationship, as Sir was mentioning earlier. He wanted to work over 4 years with the same students to understand the kind of relationship that changes things. This sort of gives me the space to build long-term relationships with a lot of creative practitioners, and I can say that it has been enriching for me and them, I'm sure, mutually. Many of them feature in exhibitions that I make. I am able to recommend their names to others. They in turn work within different batches, interact with each other, also develop different programs and collaborations. So what we're doing with SAIL is actually strengthening the cultural space in Goa itself. This program is only for residents in Goa, though a lot of people from other parts of India have written in and asked, can we be part of it? Unfortunately, right now it's only in Goa. But this is about SAIL. There are many sort of learnings that have come from this, and it will be possible to share more extensively later, but I do have other things to talk about. What we are doing very specifically is to get feedback every year from our incoming experts as well as the participants, and learn how we can continually improve the way in which we are rethinking education, we are rethinking pedagogy and andragogy, and how we in fact communicate with this very changing landscape. It's been beautiful also to be part of curriculum development programs. My colleague Samyukta is right here. We have worked together on some very interesting programs. Of course, definitely there is a whole methodology and there is a whole philosophy to how we create curriculums, but how do we learn about those things and also step beyond these specific boxes and understand how to create new tools and materials for teachers to actually interact with. These technicalities are of course important. We do need a format within which to share things with teachers. We do need to increase the number of languages through which we can communicate, because English is not of course the only thing, even though it's easiest. We need our material to be visual, we need it to be in different languages, we need it to be also applicable to people with all sorts of disabilities and learning impediments. So considering all these, we in fact worked with Tata Class Edge. In fact, Samyukta has been very instrumental in a large number of video material that we produced for children from age group of standard grade 1 to grade 8. And this was an entire body of material that covered the visual arts and design as well as art history, and it is being currently used in schools, which is something that for us is while the previous project, that is the Prestige project, went into the grey area again after a lot of work. This project, I can say, went in successfully to schools. It became resource material for a lot of schools across India to actually take and use. It is not necessary that artists are good teachers. I think that is something that we have to acknowledge very loudly here. It is unfortunately one of the small spaces where artists get good jobs. And without, of course, meaning to be rude, I do want to say that training can change the way one perceives the classroom. training and constant reflection and improvement on whatever it is the subject is can change the way in which you are actually impacting a child's life, and therefore, you know, the next generation that is going to be part of this world. So oftentimes, of course, managements are very rigid. Sometimes programs that we like to inculcate in schools, they don't have an afterlife, because when a headmistress changes or when the management changes, everything gets tossed into the bin. And I'm sure all of us have had these experiences in terms of the way we, try to do things. But we have to keep trying. I have largely spoken about, being part of outside the institution. And recently I sort of continued with this getting inside the institution, but in a visiting, kind of position, because I realized that this is an important space in which to be able to share whatever knowledge I have gained over the years. Therefore, with certain programs that I have worked on, again here Samyukta has also, shared these spaces with me. We have tried to develop these absolutely experimental methodologies in terms of learning and sharing information. So students, rather than creating a presentation, would rather make a skit or a song or a rap, piece. We also, I definitely consider that being outside the classroom, that is what Krishna spoke about, this window outside to the world, I think is hugely important for learning. And the way we see the world, the way, photography is able to enhance the way we are studying something or looking at something, taking them out into a space and understanding what better way to talk about aesthetics or architecture or, Indian art and craft, rather than just being in that space and interacting with those people. So this is again one of the methodologies that I have very strongly followed through with all the spaces that I work with, where they give me the freedom, it's wonderful. Where I don't have the freedom, there is always, something curtailed. Here again, there is always the question of sustainability, and we are talking about sustainability here. Does everything work? As long as I am there, as long as, there is somebody who believes in the methodology, it works. The moment, again, there is a change or shift and, they say, okay, we're cutting budgets, so you can't take them here, you can't take them there. It changes the way your own curriculum or what you want to share with the students is. So this is something, of course, is absolutely a reality. And I want to mention here that definitely funding is something very crucial. It is crucial to all of us working in the cultural space. If we do not have the support and funding, we cannot, carry on in the way that we do. For instance, I could not be running my mentorship program for free for students in Goa if I was not supported by Sonaparanta Center for the Arts. So, these are continuously sort of these learnings that come from these different spaces. Now, the final space that I will briefly introduce, as I said, I am a curator by profession. I have been working with galleries and museums across India for quite some time now. I don't only work with contemporary art, I work with historical art as well as indigenous arts. So all these things come together for me in a kind of seamless way wherever I am. And I feel that that is a point of privilege that I have, that I'm also, invited to be part of some wonderful projects. So to connect with Sir and your whole marrying of arts and science, I'd like to share that this particular project, which began last year, Traveling Plants, it is called, is in fact a wonderful integration of these spaces. It began with a residency at the French Institute in Pondicherry, where artists and researchers were invited to come and interact with the herbarium there. And through that, with the various ways in which plant studies impact our contemporary living. This is of course to do with larger subjects like climate change and what is happening with our biodiversity. Sangeeta, in fact, Kadur, who is here, who will give us a workshop, she was part of a workshop there as well, invited by me. And we had a wonderful series of activities. We continue to create wonderful interactions in each city that the exhibition travels to. It is going to open at the Goethe Zentrum in Hyderabad on the 27th. For everyone who is here, you're most welcome to interact with the exhibition and the activities that we're doing. In a recent program, I was able to develop an entire series of classroom activities that are based on the exhibition and the artist's work. I'm very grateful to IFA. I have been part of 2 large projects with them, one a fellowship at the Goa Chitra Museum and another an online project which is a museum of Kodava culture. Within the IFA project, I had an entire year in which to build various outreach activities around the objects in the museum. And I really feel that museums are these wonderful spaces. All kinds of art objects are so beautiful in terms of how you can learn from it. Even this exhibition which is right here, there are so many stories that one can create or that teachers can possibly use, in their own spaces. It doesn't matter what the subject is. You can find material on math and science and history and sociology. Everything is present in these, art objects and artifacts that we are encountering. There are perhaps tools that can be made available to teachers and practitioners which they can use in different ways. So I have been able to use through collaborations with others, through theatre practitioners, dancers, singers, and others, I have been able to create a large number of programs that in fact do just that, use the museum as a scene or a space for education. And the wonderful part is that many of these have had an afterlife. I understand that certain people who participated in projects years ago are taking that idea forward in their own institutions. And that for me is sustainability. If something that I am able to pass on within a space is taken forward by even one of the people in the audience, then that is sustainability. I do work with the indigenous arts, as I said. I work extensively with Mithila artists. I have been visiting and working there for over a decade now. And we have tried working with, helping them to understand different mediums, work with spaces that also give them access to printmaking or photography or, digital design, other spaces that they can see their art part of. I have also been part of an environmental organization called Artport Making Waves. And in fact, here in Hyderabad with the Goethe Zentrum, over several years, we've had engagements with schools, showing different material, understanding about various subjects like food and climate and waste and repair, so many different things. So where there is a space, it's possible for curators to sort of enter. And I think that we find a way. And teachers are the most resourceful people, I think, that they can work magic out of nothing. So I really appreciate all the different schools and art educators that I have worked with. In all the exhibitions that I have curated over the years, I do make sure that there is some element of education involved for all age groups. So there is something for children, something for adults, workshops, talks, discussions, poetry readings. I think it could be anything. When we're looking at language, it could be any language whatsoever, which works in terms of communication. And that is, I think, what I am able to bring to the table right now in this conversation. I appreciate and acknowledge all the people that I have worked with over the years, and I hope to also work with some of you who are here even more. I'm around for all 3 days, and if any of you would like to have a conversation or share some information, I'd be really happy. That's me, and thank you so much for listening. I look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Thank you so much, Leena. We now have the last panelist of the discussion, Mr. R. Srinivasan, who is from the Planning Commission in Tamil Nadu.
So I've been a teacher of economics in universities and colleges for about 2.5 decades, and then into policy making and administration in government and universities. So my exposition to art education is only as part of my profession in the government to create education policies. Whenever we do public policy, we'll have to think about the dimension of the issue that we have in hand. For instance, in Tamil Nadu, if we do an education policy, it is for 1 crore children. So when 1 crore children spending 6 hours a day, that means they are spending about 1500 hours a year. Into 1 crore is the total time that we are trying to plan through an education policy. So this is too huge to consider. And the enormity of this is very complex given. Sorry. So whenever we do a policy for education, or for that sake any sector, we'll have to look at the dimension of the problem that we have in hand. In Tamil Nadu, we have nearly 1 crore children in schools. They spend 6 hours a day into 250 days. That means 1,500 hours for every child into 1 crore. So that is the total number of hours we are trying to manage through an education policy. So this itself gives you a lot of responsibility to understand what we should do for this. And the second dimension of this problem is the complexity involved in terms of the variability of the students who come from different social background, different economic background, different linguistic background. Therefore, that itself makes the whole school system so complex. And there are different types of schools for different societies in a state. We have schools which charge somewhere around 7 lakh a year to the free schools of the government. And in between you have large number of schools. So you will understand how complex the system is. The third complexity is education is an experiential good. Once you experience that, you can never unlearn. You can never do away with that experience. I cannot go back and correct myself. So for instance, until I started talking, you were not aware what I would be talking about. And you will have to experience as I talk. Therefore, when a child enters the classroom, someone should take the responsibility to see that the child takes an experience which is relevant for that child over a period of time. So that is so important. So given this idea of experiential good is what poses a lot of responsibilities on educationists, on government officials to consider a policy that would work for all of them. But it would never work for all of them. As I said in the beginning, because of the variability in the student population, the experience cannot be the same for everyone. Can we have one policy that is suitable for all? Obviously not. Therefore, whenever we create a public policy for a state, then it should be as abstract as it could be, allowing a lot of experimentation to go on. But there will always be a struggle between individual experiments and standardization. For instance, what IFA does can reach a few thousand students a year. That is infinitesimally very small considering the largest population. Assuming there are thousands and 10,000 such experiments, and all of them have to be certified on a common comparable scale, then that becomes very difficult. So that is why we try to standardize certain things. And while standardization happens, many of the individual experiments that you have done or issues that you think is important may not get accommodated in the standardization process. So this is the struggle between individual experiences and the standardization process through which we take the education system. And this has been a struggle all through our life. While thinking about the topic of art education policy for 21st century, I was a bit sarcastic because we never had a policy in 20th century also. And with 1 quarter into the 21st century, we don't have one. And we will never have one even over the next 1 or 2 decades. The changing landscape is something that has been changing ever. There has never been a landscape which was static. So change is what is continuously happening, and therefore policies and programs have been continuously changing. It is our interpretation of change is what getting reflected into our programs and schemes. So everyone is aware of change, but how the policy makers interpret those changes, how lobby groups do that, and how that informs the policy makers to change the programs and schemes. So this is how public policies are conceived. When we think about art education, it may be an information to you. In India, we don't have a legally established school board. You know that your certificates are not legally defined. Your school boards are not legally established. They are all established by the executive order of the government. There is no law to state there should be a school system of 10+2. Where it is stated, not in the school education policy, but in the college education. University Grants Commission says an admission into an undergraduate program would require 10+2 form of school education. It is not the school education which tells you that. It is blissfully ignorant about how the system should be. So, the last policy we had was in 1986, a very small document, and the latest one came in 2020. No state government has ever made any policy till now. All that they try to do is to manage schools and create an illusion of a board. And that board, if you ask them, how do you define the board? Do you call a board for examination or do you call a board for education? Whether the board can set the syllabus, can describe the pedagogy, can inform about assessment. They would say, I am there to certify. That means I will conduct an exam. So, in education we say, you are taught for what you are assessed. Therefore, indirectly, the board decides the assessment, and that is what is being taught in the class. Therefore, if the board recognizes certain things to be learned and the way in which it has to be assessed, then those things should be taught in the way that It could be replied in the assessment process. So over a period of time, what we have done, in our madness to progression from school education to higher education, particularly into professional higher education, which is very small. For instance, in Tamil Nadu, we have about 10,000 MBBS seats, and nearly 9 lakh students write plus 2 exam. Of this 9 lakh students, nearly about 4.5 lakh students write science exams. So obviously this 4.5 would be competing for that 10,000. So, this pyramid is so steep, and the base of the pyramid, the bottom of the pyramid is very large, and the tip is so small. Therefore, this madness, every school is trying to establish what it is a school for. If you go through, every school will put up a board. Last year, so many people cleared NEET. So many people cleared IIT JEE, or so many people cleared something. I have created so many engineers, so many doctors. For the first time, we have come to learn that schools are creating doctors and engineers. Actually, it is the engineering colleges and medical colleges should create them. But we have given to understand that these schools create those people. So that is our myopic idea of what education is. Therefore, given this sort of an educational system, there is no thinking about what art education is. Many of you have been telling about art education since morning. I find that you want to pitch in art as a pedagogy to learn other subjects. But there are also people who would argue art itself is education. When art is education, just like mathematics or languages or science, we don't have a process to assess that and certify. Suppose in a matriculation exam, you should complete English, language, mathematics, science, history, and geography. Then what is the scope for art here? As education. You can teach all these things through art. That is a different question altogether. But recognizing art itself as education is not something that has been there in the educational discussion. So too sports. We never conceived sport itself as education. So we never had art or sport as a parallel disciplines like mathematics or science in school. When you don't have this, then what is the teacher talent that you would create for them to come back and teach art itself as a pedagogy? See, this is a very organic structure. Unless teachers are taught about art and art itself, they would come and teach mathematics through art or history through art. And that should evolve from school. As a teacher of economics, I would use a bit of mathematics to teach. I would use a bit of history to teach. I would use geography to teach. I also use literature to teach. Because many of these things I have read in school. But I can never use art to teach because I had never been taught. So there are two issues if you consider art education. One is to consider art as a pedagogy wherein certain exposition to art is essential to every student and also to the teachers who would later become teachers. Second, whether art has got an intrinsic value to improve educational outcomes in other subjects. For instance, I consider, I am not an artist, I never tried any art, but as I look around, artists by and large have an experiential learning system. I need not know about living in poverty, but still I will draw a poverty line and argue about how one has to be moved above poverty line. As an economist, I would do that. But as an artist, you should learn to practice art and then evolve. And this experiential learning is what would also make him to learn many other subjects as if everything else should be lived to learn. So exposing a student to art and using art as a pedagogy will change the way many other subjects could be learned. The problem here comes from one, how to design an art education within the overall education policy. As I said, we never had. The entire NEP 2020 has only 3 paragraphs on art education. So that means it is a very peripheral reference to art education. Therefore, we will have to now make art as a central point of education policy. Just like we would argue how language is important for communication, how mathematics is important for us to learn about scientific temper, to quantify what we see, so do science and history. Therefore, one has to first of all establish in the common man's mind, art itself is education, it has got certain intrinsic value for itself as well as for other subjects. Once this idea is implanted and accepted by the public, by the policy makers, by educationists, then art will find a place in the education policy. Second is, having done this, how to certify an arts teacher. Because there is a process in which we certify a teacher in mathematics or language. Whereas an art teacher, how to do that? How to evolve a system to certify that somebody could be an art teacher. So far we have seen artists are becoming teachers. Whether there are any exclusive quality for an artist to become a teacher is something that you'll have to say. And whether that can be taught, that can be learned. And if so, how it should be done. Third part is training teachers of other subjects to use art as a pedagogy in collaboration with the art teachers who are there in the school. So unless these minimum benchmarks are achieved, we cannot go further into any art policy. But there are barriers beyond this. As I see, you know that science education is very costly compared to mathematics or language because it requires a laboratory, that laboratory supplies are needed, there should be a tutor in the lab. So all these things have to be maintained. That's why many of our schools don't have a well-functioning lab. And even in higher secondary, students in the science streams don't complete their experiments before they go to the exam. It is much more costlier for art education. The per student cost of art education will be about 3x or 4x of an ordinary education. The amount of art supplies required, the store spaces, the open spaces for them to exhibit or to come and learn. So many of these things are involving huge amount of resources. So unless the government or the individuals or philanthropists or so-called educationists who run schools, for-profit schools, make enough of investment into art education for these things, it cannot be translated into the classroom. The final barrier is assessment. Art education requires very subjective assessment. It cannot be as subjective as we have reduced most other disciplines to. Subjective assessments, on one side, it requires skill and also integrity of the teachers. Both are found wanting today. Since I have been working with the government, I also review the board exam processes. Even in processes where established benchmarks, protocols are there for assessment, many of these things are overlooked and very shabby works are being done. That is why increasingly our society is not respecting the certificates issued by boards or by the universities. So where protocols exist and can be referred, compared, that itself is not up to that mark. Imagine where we are giving the assessment in the hands of the individual teachers who should assess on a comparable scale and certify based on subjective evaluation of the project works, amount of time spent, the creativity of the students, and the critical thinking one has in writing, so on and so forth. So when assessment goes wrong, then many of these education structures will fall down, as the existing structures are also failing in academics. So this is another major problem while evolving a policy within the larger education policy for art. And finally, I consider that art, if it has to find a place, then there should be a pressure from the parents and public to take art, as I said in the beginning, as an education. It has got an intrinsic value to learn, and it improves learning in other subjects as well. Once this has been established firmly, we cannot proceed further. Unfortunately, in India, there is absolutely no research on connecting art education with other educational outcomes. There have been n number of research works done abroad in US and UK, but yet conclusive evidence of art education improves overall educational outcome has never been proved. But theoretically, yes, there are arguments on the basis of philosophy, on the basis of individual experiments. There have been experiments, say for example, sending children to museums and how they interpret history compared to children who have been exposed only to the textbook. Similarly, sending children to an instrumental music and their ideas about mathematics. People have studied all this, but they have remained experiments. We are yet to generalize the role of art in education and role of art in learning other subjects and role of art as an education itself. Unless we have enough number of research publications, enough of data to prove our first statement, education, art is education, we cannot proceed further. So, as people interested in art education, I request that you and your friends work to prove this point first, and then we will proceed further. Thank you very much.
Okay, panel. A lot of important questions were raised, and as art practitioners, educators, I think these are very important concerns that we need to take into consideration. For the paucity of time, what I will do is I quickly have like a few questions for the panelists here and then open the floor for questions from the audience. And if I may begin with you, Gayatri, this is to do with the topic of today's panel, which was about looking at how the changing landscape, and for us, if we look at how quickly things are changing, whether it's education or arts education per se, what do you think would be some approaches that we can make art education relevant today? And how can we find a place where young people are encouraged, are feeling very actively, connected with the arts? So where do you think art education can become relevant, and how do you, I mean, if you can just summarize it a little bit for us.
Challenging question. Okay, there's two parts to it. One is how do we make it relevant for the children, for the students who are experiencing it. I think that all comes to what everybody's been saying is how do you make the art class an experience, and how do you make it interesting? Because I remember from my younger days what art class was. Right? It was very limited. There was a paper pen, some color pastels, and you draw the same scenery again and again and again and again, right? So one is that the art teacher needs to be trained. They need to have some sort of like tools in their bag when they go into the classroom. What is this experience I'm creating for the children? How am I making it different? It should not be a free class, right? It should not be a class where children are just kind of using that time period to catch up with friends or with gossip or whatever. Or sometimes even bunking that class. So it should be like sir was saying, children should want to come to the class. So one is that how do we make that experience of being in art class relevant? I think we need to definitely go beyond the pen, paper, color pencil thing, and that comes back to the whole resources challenge, right? How do we give more things to students to play with when it comes to art, multimedia, there's devices, we need things like tablets and we need software and we need things that are relevant today. You see how we're all consuming photographs, video, digital media, graphic design, and now if you think about even career options, if you want people to think of art as a career, you need to be able to prove to them that look, you can make money doing this. So to make it relevant, it can't just be okay, come to art class. It is like if you pick up these skills, there is these creative jobs waiting for you when you get out of school or college. So I think it is a kind of a full circle we need to meet. One is in the school level, it has to be creating experiences where children really enjoy themselves and they're picking up critical skills. Just like when they learn sports, they're learning certain things. They're learning in cricket, they're learning how to hold bat, ball, catch, right? So here they need to know how to use the color pencils that they have, how to use a computer, how to use software that's in the computer, how to, visiting museums and things like that. Those are important experiences to create so that they can see, they can aspire, oh, tomorrow my work can be in the museum or my work can be in the biennale. So we have to kind of close the loop for the students that the art class has a future for them, whether it's becoming an artist, whether it's becoming a creative professional, that pays well. There are some really well-paid, high-paying jobs in the creative industry, which somehow I think parents and teachers and administrators have not recognized. There are entire cities running on creative industries. If you think of Chennai, if you think of Bombay, if you think of Hyderabad, there are so many creative jobs here. So I think advertising that there's an end goal to it. I think all of that will make art education very relevant today, because I think for so long, the reason why we are pushing children toward engineering and doctor is not because we want them to study engineering or we want them to treat patients. We want them to make money. We want them to be successful. We want them to go up the social and economic ladder as well. Right? So telling them that even with a creative job, you can do those things. I think that will make it very relevant at a large scale. Not at this kind of like small levels of working, but kind of changing the impression of what this industry can do for them. Yeah. If anybody else wants to add, I think.
I just wanted to add to that a little bit in saying that yes, there is a direct relationship between what happens in the school, what happens in college education, and what happens in the professional space. They can't be kept away from each other, and what begins in the school continues, to the people that we are working with in today's innovative world. So that I think is
Right. Thank you so much. Question to the whole team. I wanted maybe for you to share a little more on the role of teachers and how teachers can take up art education a little more proactively. How can they start to approach art education in a different manner than what is being practiced today?
Art education or education as an art. Okay, there is difference actually. So I'm interested in the second part of that. Looking at education with so-called artistic view. Okay, art education can become a subject immediately. Okay, one of the subjects. But whereas looking at the whole education as an art, okay, so if I am more concerned with this. Now, it may look very philosophical, but it is time to really look into this question very, very seriously and very deeply. And we need not to really be very hurried in connecting so-called creativity and productivity in any sense. Okay, seeking a job, of course, it is necessary. We need to earn money. But if we are really running behind that, that will spoil the whole game of this life itself. Because I want to use this word, ಜೀವನ ಒಂದು ಲೀಲೆ. Okay, ಜೀವನ ಒಂದು ಚಟುವಟಿಕೆ. I will just translate that. Looking at life as a kind of play. Okay, looking at the life as an activity. Mandala, bunch of activities. So there is no difference between looking at life, even education, as a play, and looking at the life as an activity. So when it becomes activity, action, okay, then our whole, this horizon will become it shrinks and it becomes very small circle. So that's why we have it is not easy actually, okay, as Sir said, it can happen with a small group. But even then it is very meaningful experiment if someone can do this. Of course, there are many organizations, even individuals who are really very seriously engaged in this, right? So that is one thing. Second thing is, it is possible when we give enough space to children and also to the teachers to explore, re-explore their way of teaching, their way of learning, and give space for that actually. Otherwise, if we demand that within these many hours you should complete one lesson, and within so many years, so many months you should complete the syllabus, and then conduct the examination. So the circle is very narrow. Again, we are looking at this whole process of education as a product oriented. We want to produce, good number of passes. How much pressure it is putting on the minds of children and also the parents. It's not a small joke actually, because every year, this committing suicide is increasing. And why? And who is responsible for that? So that's why I'm telling, there are many reasons I can mention here, but this example is enough. So this is a time where we need to really think about the whole education in very, very different way. I don't have answers for that, okay. But as Sir also has recognized that there are some individuals, some small organizations who are very seriously involved in this question. finding answers for this question. Fortunately, there are some parents who are ready to, their number may be very small, but they are ready to send their children for this kind of new experiments. Let us have hope.
Can I just add one?
Yeah, please.
So this question was about teachers in the class, right? So two things I want to showcase from the testimonials we get when we ask children what was their experience of the class, of the photography class. And two things that stood out is the freedom that they experience in the art class is something that they don't get in the the other subjects or classrooms. So I think one thing that art teachers are doing really well is allow, and should continue to do, is this allowing this freedom to have multiple outcomes from a single prompt. Because every other subject, I think we all want the children to all arrive at the same point. But art is one of those few places where children can all have multiple directions that they can go in. So that's something I think art teachers should continue doing, is allowing children to not conform and not all somehow reach the same mountain scenery, etc., etc. And the other is, I think, this idea of allowing children to take risks and do something that might not impress you as the teacher, but it's that, and maybe you think the child has failed, but I think allowing them to take that risk and make something completely different and new, I think that freedom is what makes a successful artist in the future. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that was very telling, and that's also the role of a teacher. I think that's what we wanted to also highlight, especially as art educators here. My question to you, Mr. Srinivasan, this is about a lot of art programs as well as artists and art educators. Though they might be very high intentions to kind of make an impact through the use of arts, but often funding and securing funding becomes a challenge. And hence the sustainability of such programs is quite often a problem that they grapple with. Do you have any suggestions or approaches on how art educators or art organizations can look at this aspect?
Yeah, art actually attracts a lot of funding from the government. The problem is government has got a rigid system. Because every government is answerable to the assembly. And therefore there is a rigid system of accounting procedure. I'll give you one example. If I have to buy this pen or a mobile, I go to the vendor and ask him, how much is it? Say some 7,000. I'll go to the next one, say 6,000, 6,500. Then I come back to the first one and tell him, see, he's selling at 6,500. Why don't you give me at 6,400? I will buy this. Because your competitor is giving me this. So when I have to decide for myself, I will take this effort and decide on the lowest price possible. Whereas when I have to do it for the government, will I do that? Will everyone do that? Therefore, we have to go through a process of tendering. And this tender process itself is so complex. And ultimately, either I will cut down the price or I will cut down the quality. So it is inherent in the government system itself.
Actually, both.
Yeah, both can happen. See, even without corruption I am talking about. So if you infuse corruption, then that will be much worthless. Therefore, the government system is a bit complex. Where we have to work is, government also has alternate processes. For instance, I know in Tamil Nadu we work with a lot of NGOs when it comes to delivery of services with compassion. All our orphanages, old age homes, homes for special children, school for special children, homes for women, destitutes. Many of these things are run only by the NGOs because nobody can work for money. Government cannot recruit someone and tell them you be very affectionate to the inmates. That can never happen. Nobody would increase the affection with the increase in salary. Therefore, there are certain processes within government where NGOs can work in collaboration with the government in delivery of services. I find art is one such, but we are not creating enough of lobby with the government to do that. For instance, in Tamil Nadu, we have art schools. We have about 15 art schools where only art is taught for school children. So they would later be certified at the school living level in instrumental music, in vocal music, in Oduvar, Tamil version of recital of sacred hymns. So these are all things that are happening. The problem is, in a political world, lobby works well, and lobby becomes bigger by the size of the population. And therefore, majority alone works. That's why I said in the beginning, in the minds of the people, art should also be inculcated as education. Once that idea is caught up with the public, then obviously the lobby will work and see that it is also included. And also work with art educationers like you and art professionals so that art becomes a normal process like learning anything else, and also exhibiting many other skills. Someone would exhibit the skills of a medical professional. So do the artistic skills will also be exhibited, and that will be considered. So that is what we need to do.
Thank you so much, sir. I think my last question would be to you, Lina. And I think you touched upon that topic earlier, where we're looking at outreach and making sure that arts becomes accessible outside of institutions, even if it's a school. The child having an opportunity to work inside a classroom versus the child seeing art around their communities. That's a place that we haven't yet ventured into. Some organizations probably adopt a community and try to make it visible. But in terms of that outreach, can you share certain, maybe a few best practices on how can we make communities more accessible to art, including, like, say, gallery spaces and museums, which can become, they can be the attention-catching, grabbing kind of places.
Yeah, thank you for that. I don't know, there are of course a few galleries and museums across India that include an arts program within their regular, the way they regularly make exhibitions or have an outreach. But this is very, very limited. I think it comes also from the kind of segregation we already have in the way we look at art, because fine art galleries are often very closed spaces. A lot of people have inhibitions in entering an art space or a museum, wondering whether their knowledge will be questioned or whether they will be made to feel lesser in some way. And I think this is something that really needs to be addressed. It certainly needs to be addressed in our contemporary art spaces. Visiting the Chennai Photo Biennale just a couple of weeks ago was a very good experience, because it was wonderful to see how open everything was and how accessible it had been made for people of all ages. But that's one example. And there are a few case studies like this that are able to bridge this gap between what we consider high art or what becomes very elitist within a white cube space, and what is our culture, which is very, very open. And the textiles of India, for instance, if you just see how many people are wearing these beautiful, textiles, and what stories they can tell, what the motive can speak of. That is the kind of very, very open space that has to be developed, but it can only happen by this entire cycle. Like Sir said, first we have to prove through research that this is important, then have this position within the spaces that are educational spaces. Then we sort of go to the next step and, have an opening in museums and galleries for positions that are actually bridging this gap. Because many galleries have a writer and a curator and an exhibitions person and a marketing person because sales is important. But they don't have an educations person. A lot of museums now, like CSMVS in Bombay or maybe MAP Museum in Bangalore, have a unit which is working on museum education. But again, it is a limited space. So there are case studies, there are places and models I think we can look towards in making an attempt, and all of us in our little spaces should not stop. A conference like this is able to connect all of us in a way that I feel is important in making the research papers possible, which will ultimately help to change a public view on what art is. But yes, we need those spaces to be filled. We need these jobs to open up. We need people who are trained in both education as well as the arts to occupy these spaces where that integration can happen. Some of us are doing it organically, but if it becomes a category, then more people may look towards it in order to bridge them. I hope that answers.
This is something I've been thinking about a lot because we run a public art festival, right? Actually, India has such a strong connection to art. And I feel like what's happening now is that maybe the art world is moving away from this connection. And one of the theories I have is like if you think of festivals, you think of like Pujo in Kolkata, or you think of Pongal, or you think of any big festival in India, they are so well attended, there's so many people, and they are doing creative things every year, right? So I think as art organizations and institutions and schools, we need to figure out how to incorporate existing spaces, existing festivals, cultural practices, and then figure out how to incorporate an art program within that framework. I think Pujo is one of the best examples. If nobody's visited, actually I have not visited, but I've seen photographs. But they do these things where they have not just the religious aspect of worshipping, but they will create things about climate change and all the things that we do in art programs. Even Ganesh Puja, I'm sure the idea is how do we incorporate art programs into existing cultural programs. I think that's a space we need to all look into, and then maybe we'll find that we bridge that gap.
Thank you so much, Gayatri. I think that was really very, very insightful, and I think some of the questions that we had in the end, although I thought they might repeat, but I think we got very nice insights. I'd like to open the floor for any questions from the audience. If there are any, please raise your hands. Yes.
Can we start?
Oh yes, sorry, we need one more. I think let's start it.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Hello.
We need the second mic. You can keep it. You keep that. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Deepthi. It was really, really nice hearing all of you speak. Very insightful. Loved each of what you said. I think my main question is, how do each of you as teachers and curators and policy makers anticipate the needs of the future? Because I think the work that you're trying to do is not just address what's needed today, but also frame something for the future. How do you do it without sort of resorting to the power dynamic that you were talking about earlier of, who has a camera and who's behind the lens and in front of the lens, but like teaching and students has this power dynamic of, one person knowing better than the other or knowing more than the other. How do you sort of anticipate the needs for the future without resorting to that power dynamic?
I need 2 minutes to think a little bit, but I have.
I need 3.
Can we do it?
Should I like?
I think they just said they need a little.
Okay, I'll start.
Reframe that.
So, how do you as policymakers or teachers or curators anticipate what students would need or what young people and children would need in the future and where the future of art is going or education is going without prescribing a curriculum to them or without, making it something that is like child-led or student-led and not, I think you need to do this and there's like a power dynamic about it. So how do you work around with that, I guess?
Actually, it is.
Intending to ask, what are your plans to prepare for the coming years?
Yeah, I just want to know how each of you like personally kind of work around it, not like a universal thing, but just sort of,
No, actually, as far as education is concerned, there are informed sources from where we get ideas about what we should do. One source we get is what researchers tell us. And there are several types of research that go into, for instance, if I understood you well, the power dynamics between the student and the teacher first. So there are research which works on that. So increasingly we understand how the teachers yesteryears have been, where I give my knowledge to you and you are there to receive. Whereas today we have moved to a system where we both discover knowledge together. So where classroom itself is seen as a place of discovery of knowledge. So that is what we are trying to establish in the classroom through our textbooks, through our assessment processes. Unfortunately, the teachers, the older school is still with the idea that I will give my knowledge to you. Whereas the younger generation works on the other principle that we both learn, where I will allow you to learn on your own. In Tamil Nadu, we have been experimenting with that from class 1 to 5, where the children are only guided to learn. And our research with the teachers show that the classroom is enabled to discover only with the younger teachers, whereas the older ones have been trained in the older fashion of teaching, whereas the younger generation is allowing learning to happen on its own. So, as I said in the beginning, experiments are happening all over, but generalization is becoming difficult because the research is not happening at the scale that we want. For instance, one of the studies in the US was about 1 lakh children at the same point in time over 10 years of how their learning of art influenced the learning of other subjects. This sort of a longitudinal cohort study is what we need in India. But we are not doing a research of a scale that is required for a country of a continental size. And still we are left with only few individual experiments. And those individual experiments are not enough to create an abstract policy that would be acceptable to most of us.
I have a question.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is.
One second. Gayatri
I want to respond to the earlier question. Just on the power dynamics, I think one of the point already made was about facilitation versus being a teacher. A lot of the tools, exercises you see in the books that we've made is actually almost anybody can do the run the class because it's designed in a way that it's not him personally. And the other is for me personally, I think the way I want to think of students preparing for the future is we live in these very strange times now. There are so many problems in terms of gender rights, about communalism and things like that. I think mainly we want to bring up students who have empathy, who have the ability to see multiple perspectives and narratives, and to be able to be completely critical of authority. So for example, I want my students to say, hey, I don't agree with you. Or what you're saying, how are you saying that? What proof do you have? So I think we, at least I see that as the role of the art teacher, is to create this space where the student can say, I don't agree with you, or I have a different way of thinking about this. I think that's, for me, is the core of what we do, is having different opinions now, because we are in a very dangerous time.
Okay. I will respond to the same question in my more philosophical way, little bit philosophical. So sir mentioned about one marriage, that is marriage between science and arts. So now I am bringing another marriage here. So marriage between knowledge, subject knowledge or knowledge of whole education, that is knowledge, let us call it as knowledge, and love. So we can train teachers, very eminent teachers, through our education system, right? But unless we really somehow inculcate this attitude, love for the profession, love for the children, and love for the life, their own life, okay, then something will happen. Otherwise, it becomes very mechanical. So what actually children are, how do we understand what really children need to learn? Actually, we need to understand them that they are not coming to schools to learn something, whatever we want to teach them. They may be, they like to come to schools to play with their, friends. Why can't our schools become, a place to play a lot? Because then one experiment has done by Dr. Peter Gray, you must have heard about him. Peter Gray is an educational psychologist. He is in state sector. Very recently, he has written many papers on this experimentation. Okay, play plays greater role in child's education. You can find out that paper also. So, if we can really understand and think on these lines, we'll be able to understand our children and understand our own self in better way.
Yeah, we have more questions. Yes.
Yeah. My name is Mulas Nilanda. I'm a software entrepreneur. By birth, an artist. I can proudly say that. Because past 45 years, I am doing the same practice in art. Whenever I get syntax errors in my monitor, I go and say, is a reason I do art. So the thing is actually, childhood onwards, my father also is an engineer, electrical engineer. He also a hobby artist, and he encouraged me to meet as an artist, like that. So from those days, this day, my children, daughter has completed her graduation in BTech, and my one more kid, boy, is doing 10th class. So he is well versed about, imagination, whatever it may be. He possesses, hereditary or whatever it may be, he got it. And he is very much interested into the art itself. Comparatively other subjects like traditional subjects, what we impose into the students, okay? Up to 10th class, that is social studies, English, maths, etc. etc. My question is to Srinivasan sir, because he is into the commission, planning commission of Tamil Nadu. So, like bureaucrats, like Srinivasan sir, can recommend the government to impose or commencement of university, particularly universities, to art field only. By LKG he has to study the art itself. And after completion of art studies, he has to search for career in art itself. Not the engineer or doctors are like, because I alternately chosen the software industry. Because in those days, it was not opportunity, I didn't get opportunity to have the seat in JNT. Only one university here in Andhra Pradesh, at the time unified Andhra Pradesh, it is now in Telangana. After completion of my 10th, I wrote that PFA exam and I didn't get. Only one university was there and only 36 were there. That is the question I want to ask you.
In Tamil Nadu, we have an University of Art and Science, exclusively, and
Tamil Nadu.
yeah, and there are about 15 arts colleges which teach art alone. So both in the government as well as in the private sector. So that higher education in arts, I did not touch upon higher education in arts because that is a field of its own, and that has got a different dimension to think about. I worked on school education because I thought that most of you would be interested to know how school education and art in school education works. It is a different take altogether when it comes to higher education. I'll have to give you a different story.
I have a question. It's not a question actually, it's my experience that I'm going to share today. I and my sister run an art gallery in Hyderabad here, and I would thank IFA to host it in Hyderabad. That's our privilege, and thank you dear friends from Chennai, and on behalf of all the Hyderabadis, I thank you all. And a little my experience that I've shared. I come from a very different background. I was into business journalism. And my sister was interested in arts every time. And my mom never let her do art, study art. She said after PG, you can do whatever you choose to. And by then it was too late for my sister to go and join an art college. So luckily she studied English literature, and that's how she started writing about the art and artists here in Hyderabad. And her name is Ati Amjad. And we run an art gallery called Daira Center for Arts and Culture in Hyderabad, and by mistake I entered with my sister. That was my mom's idea. You have to support your sister, and since you are into business journalism, you could do the other part, like getting the finances and everything. And when I entered the scenario, it was totally different. There's no market. I was interviewing a lot of businessmen from Hyderabad, top people from pharma, hotel, and everybody else. And when I came into this field, there was nothing like selling art and how a gallery would sustain. And we were like not from a business family, but my parents were all government employees in good positions only. Yeah, but yes, let me. So that is how, and it was a struggle for me how to sustain a gallery. And when I was researching on that, there was like no education about art. And that's how I started the Children's Fine Art Gallery. I've been working with that now. And now I'm like, I started learning also, and accumulated a lot of degrees in arts as well. From business journalism, I've forgotten business journalism now. I'm into arts now. And now I was very impressed by the first session that we had, arts and science. It's very important. We did a project called Art is Everywhere. So, sorry. Yes, so the only thing is, we have to give importance to art education. And that we lack, because when they say art, it only comes as a hobby. Like somebody said here. And like, I think so he's very, what to say, not happy with what he's right now. So that is how like I also wrote a book and I will share that with you later. The problem is how to, sorry, we
don't have time.
We
can connect, we can connect.
We have a lovely panel, so we would like to engage them. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Please, through the 2 days to talk and share.
Thank you so much. I think we have already overshot the time by almost half an hour. So can I request the people who have some questions, if they can ask it to the panelists, maybe outside of lunch. Yeah.
Thank you, Saveen. Thank you, lovely panelists, for sharing. I know a lot of you have questions. You want to share your experience with arts education or the fact that you didn't have that experience. Please feel free over the next 3 days to meet all the panelists, not this panel, but all the other panels as well. To engage with them, understand, and think of new creative ways in which we can engage in the curriculum. So, and like Satya said, do step out to ask questions. Since we're running a little late, we're going to break for lunch now. We'll come back for a workshop with Sangeeta at 3 p.m. over here. Sangeeta has given a few instructions. She has requested you after lunch to step out, and if you find fallen leaves, flowers, seeds, any shape, any size, they don't have to be perfect. Please bring 4 or 5 of these, 4 or 5 back here, and we will engage in her workshop, which is looking at journaling with nature. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.